Right, guys. So far we have hazard movement and we have the helicopter movement, and we're also looked into creating the way that obviously when they interact with each other, the helicopter dies. You restart the level. Obviously, the problem we've got is we only have one hazard. We can place lots of hazards in the scene if we want to, but then when they get past the helicopter, they don't really do anything. So in this video, we're going to look at actually creating a random spawn generator. So that's what we're going to look at. So to start this, it is quite simple. We're going to go into the scene. We're going to right click in the hierarchy, and we are going to add an empty game object. Just right click, create empty. We're going to call this the spawn manager. Make sure it is central to the world, because you don't want it to randomly spawn things where you don't really need them and stuff like that. And then we're going to go into the project window under the scripts folder, right click, create C# script, and we will call this the spawn underscore generator. One thing that I will point out, if you, and I'll show this because I see this a lot, if you right click, create a script, click off of it, and then go to rename it, so say I wanted to call this, I don't know, the spawn script 1, yep. So click on this. This is going to kick out a few issues for us, because as you can see down here, it's spawn script 1, but up in the actual script, it doesn't believe it's called that. It thinks it's called new behavior script. So we're going to run into problems with that. Whereas with the spawn generator, because I didn't click off it when I renamed it, it's fine as it is. So make sure that you're not clicking off of your scripts when you create them, or else we lose references essentially. The Unity thinks it's called one thing, the scripting thinks it's called something else. Right, so double click on the spawn generator. Once we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to start off quite simply with 5 variables at the top. So the first one is going to be a public float called spawn cooldown. Second one, a public game object called hazard. Obviously this is going to be a reference to the hazard we created earlier. The third one is also a public game object, but what we call this one is an array of game objects, and the way we show this is by putting open close square brackets. And what this is going to reference, the spawn points that hazards will be spawning at. Because we will randomly pick between a couple of different spawn points, we have to have more than one. So that's what I'm calling it, spawn points. Then we're going to have something called a private integer, so we put private int, and this is our spawn index, like that. And our last one is a private game object. This is just one, not an array, and this is going to be for current spawn point. So there is hazards. There's variables. What we're going to write first is I am going to write the spawn script. So for this one, we don't actually need this update function. We can remove that. We can remove that. We do need the start function, but we don't need the update function. So for the first function we're going to make, that's not in the start function. This is called our spawn function. So we can see how this is set up here as a function. We've got void, so we'll type void. Then it's the name of the function, spawn, or whatever I just typed. Open bracket, close bracket. And then we open the curly bracket, hit enter a couple of times to get some space in there, and then we close the curly bracket. So that's our spawn function. We set the function up correctly, we just need to populate it. So I'm going to start with referencing the spawn index that we just create a variable for. We're going to say that equals random dot range, and the minimum this is going to be is 0, and the maximum it's going to be is spawn points dot length. We're going to close the bracket, close the line. So what this is essentially doing is when we have an array for spawn points, the first spawn point in the list is technically 0. And because we don't know what the last one is, because we could have like 15 spawn points, we just say whatever the full length of spawn points is the last one. Right. So the next line is current spawn point equals spawn points, and then in square brackets, spawn index. And we're just saying, right, once that's figured out what the spawn index is, that means that's our spawn point. And the last one is actually creating the hazard. So we call this an instantiation function. So we instantiate, and we want to obviously create a hazard, and then where we want to create it is at the spawn point dot transform. We close that bracket and close that line. So that's that line, that's that function done. So I'm going to make it look a little bit neater there. So as I say, the lines are, right, let's figure out what the spawn index is, because we randomly select it. From there, we tell the current spawn point what the current spawn point is, and then we create, using the instantiation function, a hazard at the current spawn point. Obviously, this wouldn't work yet, because what we're going to put in now, we're going to put a timer in. Timers work in an interesting way. So we don't actually call them timers for starters. We call them IE enumerators. And this is set up similar to a function. So an IE enumerator, I'm going to call this spawn timer. Open bracket, close bracket. Do that, obviously, because it's a function, and that's how we set up a function. And this is where we bring time into it. So we say yield return new, wait for seconds. So this is where we tell it how many seconds we're going to wait between spawning. We've actually set up a spawn cooldown, which is just set up into a float, which is what it's looking for. So we can type spawn cooldown in there, and that line's complete. Then after it's waited for so many seconds, we want it to spawn, which is nice and easy. We just say spawn. And then once it's done that, we want it to start the timer all over again. So we say start coroutine, and then in here we say spawn timer, like that. Open bracket, close bracket, and then obviously we've got to close the bracket again to close the first one. And that's that function, or that's the timer complete. Obviously, if we put this into the game now, it wouldn't do anything because, yeah, it restarts the timer after it's got to that point. However, it never actually starts the timer. So what we want to do is we want to take this line here, we're going to copy that, and we want to put it into the start function. Right, and that's our spawn generator set up on the code side of things. Now we just need to save this, go back into here, make sure we're not getting any errors popping up, which we haven't. I don't think we have. Yep, so we're good. The spawn manager, obviously that's got nothing on it at the moment, so we want to just put spawn generator on there. Right, so now it's asking us for a few things. It's asking us, right, how long am I waiting? So let's say 3 seconds, just for the time being. And then it's saying, right, what am I spawning? So we created the prefabs in the last video for hazards. We just want to put that in there. We'll double check that this has got everything we need on it. Rigid body, box collider 2D, and movement script. Yep, so that's all good. The last thing it's looking for is spawn points. So I'm going to say maybe I'll have 3 spawn points. So I'll just enter 3, hit enter. Right. So how do we set these spawn points is the question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click in here, create empty, spawn point. I'm going to use this little box up in the top as well, because what this does, if I click this, as you can see in here, I can see it now. It's not got a sprite render or anything, so it's completely invisible in the game. But using that means I can see it in the scene view. I'm going to center this to the world. Obviously, that's not where I want it to be. But what I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to prefab that. I'm going to drag it into the prefabs folder. And there we go, I got prefab. So I'm going to place this kind of randomly in the scene. So we go from here, put that there, and then maybe make another one and put that there. And then all I need to do is need to go into here and I need to add the different spawn points, the different elements. So we just need to double check a few things. The helicopter's there. Spawn manager should be working. We've got the spawn cooldown at 3 seconds. We've referenced the right prefab and we've referenced the spawn points. So without jinxing it, if I click play, this should now work. So we have to wait 3 seconds. And there we go. We've got a hazard spawning up there. We've got one down there. As you can see, this is randomly selecting which hazard. It's waiting 3 seconds, and then it's adding to it. If we want to increase the difficulty, we may then drop the spawn cooldown to 1 second. So now you'll see they spawn at a faster rate, which obviously makes it a little bit more difficult. There we go, I died straight away. So that's creating a spawn script. We're randomly picking between 3 different points and instantiating a prefab over an amount of time that we tell it to do. So that's this video. In the next video, we will look at how we can score from that, because obviously technically the game's pretty much playable, but we're not getting any score. We don't know what the high score is or anything like that. So we're going to look at that in the next video. But thanks a lot. Cheers.